The guy recalled how he walked through the city at night and turned to his parents through time. He recalled that it had already been a year since he lived an ordinary life until something happened. Once a guy was walking calmly along a pedestrian crossing, as he should, when the traffic light was green. But suddenly for him, a truck jumped out and rushed straight at the guy, who clearly did not expect this. Suddenly he was transported to another world, completely different from the ordinary one in which he had lived before. At first, he cried non-stop and wanted to run away from there. It all happened so suddenly. But after the guy had hoped that he could return home, he was finally able to fit into the new world. He and his comrades fought for justice and the triumph of good over evil where there was blood. It flowed like a river, and the corpses formed mountains, and gradually, he began to understand one thing. What is real courage, camaraderie, and he again turned to his parents. It might seem ridiculous to them, but he is no longer that weak and insecure boy counting on other people's help. Now he himself has become a person whose help others count on. He recalled how his comrades died in his arms, but they still continued to believe in him. He had been to the funerals of his comrades more than once, the last time, for example, at the witches. He gained a lot and lost a lot, still remembering the cemetery and the funeral, the guy thought. Now he can accept with dignity the challenges thrown at him by fate. Finally, after a year in this world, his journey here is coming to an end. While he was sitting and writing a letter, they approached him and asked about his readiness. He stood up, hiding the scroll behind his back so as not to be seen, and walked away. It may be useless to ask for this in a letter that will not reach the recipient, but still, you need to pray for him. Praying that he would defeat the demon and be able to return home, he thought, looking at his team. We need to ask God for all this to end and become just a distant memory. We'll see him after his return, because his team is already calling him. This was all said from a son who misses his family and past life. With love, from Kim Min-soo. The bell rang and Kim Min rode in the carriage, chanting that the demon had been defeated and their world had been saved. The royal drink was just something. They could drink it at a feast in their honor. The girl reminded Kim Min that he would finally return home, calling him a hero. Somehow sadly looking into the reflection of the drink in his cup, he concluded that this day had really come. Got here, he didn't even hope that he would succeed, but then he was just very busy with self-pity. She hugged the guy, letting him know that she really appreciated his good work and that he was great. After sitting in a stupor for a while, he could not contain himself and began to cry, saying how much he wanted to see his family and friends. Suddenly their team intervened. The old man gloated, saying that he knew there was something between them, and the girl joked that she could find someone prettier, which is why she immediately moved away from the guy, to the ridicule of the team. One of them asked if Kim Min wanted to stay with him. Maybe he shouldn't come back at all. But they knew that the hero missed his world. Apparently they were not afraid to offend him with such words. They understood all this and remembered it, but they simply did not want him to leave. Taking his hand, the girl offered to pray for the bright future of their hero, after which she squeezed his hand tighter and announced that for all his merits and exploits, he was entitled to something. But she didn't mean some kind of gift, but a happy life full of good luck and well-being. 3 weeks passed from that moment. The action further took place in Seoul, Gangso-gu district. Kim Min stood at the pedestrian crossing, looking at the sky, among the bustling people walking. He remembered the words of the priestess, and understood that she was wrong and deeply mistaken. Maybe the guy was able to heroically save the world, but he still couldn't save himself. He returned home and, waiting to meet his relatives, rang the bell. But he was met by a stranger, who was the new owner of this apartment. In the 8 months that he was away from Seoul, everything somehow changed dramatically. His mother handed out flyers in an attempt to raise public awareness of his disappearance. As a result, on one of these days she was hit by a car, the criminal fled, and was never found. And the father was never able to come to terms with the loss, committing suicide, blaming himself for not being able to protect his family. Even in his suicide note, he asked that his missing person notice be posted on all resources that reported his suicide. The guy came to a place where 2 ashes, his father and his mother, stood in a separate cell, and next to them there was a photo of them taken a couple of years ago. He was in despair and did not know what to do next. He could not hold back his tears, because he had lost everything that was dear to him and through no fault of his own. The police decided that he simply ran away from home, and the director did not want to hear about reinstatement at school after several months of absence. So he was expelled from school. Reproaches flew from all sides. For example, that he should prepare for college exams in order to atone for his guilt before his parents. Someone said that he was a brat and should pull himself together and live like a respectable person. Kim Min retreated more and more into himself, because he was already depressed by the news about his parents, and it was not his fault. But everyone thought the opposite. He also could not communicate with his friends. For example, one was allegedly forbidden by his mother because he was graduating soon. He, of course, apologized, but who will understand the guy? Because no one even tried to get into his position. There was no one who could help him. He was left completely alone with his thoughts. As a result, he turned out to be an ungrateful son who killed his parents. His father's relatives were his last hope. But his uncle just started kicking him mercilessly, accusing him of being responsible for the death of his younger brother. He shouted very offensive things, that he could not be considered a person. It was unknown where he had been hanging around all this time. The uncle beat Kim Min, while his wife tried to pull him away and continued to shout that this guy killed his parents. The man still couldn't calm down, and tried to break free from his wife's death grip. He just wanted to kill the guy, whom he considered a brute. Their daughter simply asked Kim Min to leave if he did not want the situation to repeat itself. It was not enough that their family would also collapse because of him. After everything that happened, he had no choice but to lie down on a park bench. They were a simple family, so they didn't have any big savings. A couple of kids walked past him, eating burgers, and he moved to a sitting position, looking at the food with hungry eyes. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, and found that it was, one might say, almost empty. He had nothing, no family, no education, no money, or even any place in society. His so-called heroic personality was destroyed, he reasoned, hoping it was a dream or just a terrible nightmare. Kim Min saved the world, saved a large number of people, but they didn't seem to notice it. He responded when they needed him and did his best to return home. The guy didn't understand how it happened that in the end he was left completely alone. Thinking about this, he stopped in the middle of the road and could not hold back his tears. But then someone bumped into his shoulder. It was some big, boorish guy who immediately aggressively asked why he was standing rooted to the spot, thinking that he was somehow down. Taking advantage of the fact that the guy looked harmless, the jock wanted to deal with him physically. But the girl stopped him, saying that he was already a loser. The bully thought that the guy was lucky and would let him go, since he made his girlfriend laugh. The guy, with tears in his eyes, not even the least bit afraid of the thug, angrily asked if they were laughing. Was it because they found it funny that their lives were saved by a hero? The guy asked, already crying. But the bully just started getting angry at him and calling him a big-eyed prick. But it was at that moment that the guy realized what he wanted. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but a smile slowly spread across his face. He wanted everyone to suffer. The jock grabbed him by the hair, not understanding what this schoolboy was muttering, threatening to punch him in the face. But suddenly the guy put his hand out with his palm towards the ground and began to call on Duran's sword. The bully had already swung, and at that time his girlfriend was laughing with all her might, considering the guy to have gotten used to the role well and to be mentally retarded. The girl burst out laughing, but literally in a second, a sword flew out of the ground, leaving only the boar's hand on the guy's head. When her boyfriend's blood splashed onto her face, she opened her eyes and stood in a stupor. But after a minute, she realized what had happened, looked at the remaining hand and just started screaming in horror. His hero armor began to appear on Kim Min, and at this time he was wiping away his tears. It was unfair that only he was suffering. He is a hero and believed that he should not be sad. But the guy was not going to tolerate it, and, having fully dressed, he took his sword. Now it is their turn to pay the bills. The world must tremble before him. Swinging, he began to spin with his weapon and create a sphere of energy and fire. A huge fireball began to cover Kim Min's home area, destroying everything in its path. The guy looked at all the destruction he had made. The world was saved, and everyone lived happily ever after. This is how stories should end, the guy thought, standing on the only hilly island in the middle of a huge crater. But on that day, Seoul's Gangseogu district was razed to the ground by the world's injustice to its hero. 3 weeks after the hero's madness, the surrounding areas of Gyeonggi province were clogged with traffic jams of people trying to escape. Every person has at least once imagined what the end of the world would be like. A nuclear war, a natural disaster, a zombie apocalypse. Park Jong-soo sat in the passenger seat, surrounded by his family, like many of them standing in this traffic jam. Because of her, They were barely moving forward, and his little sister was stressed and could not hold back her tears. She didn't know where they were going and why their father wasn't around. She asked these questions to her older brother. His father had just sent him a message saying that the meeting place was in Busan and they needed to go south. Mom was driving, she would meet her father soon, so there was no reason to worry and distract her from the road. While the guy was trying to calm his sister down, suddenly a man on a motorcycle flew between the rows, and then he stopped abruptly at the beginning of the traffic jam. Apparently he wanted to make some kind of announcement. No one could have imagined that the world would be destroyed by the hero by whom it was once saved. He picked up a megaphone and, addressing the citizens, began to announce that the hero had almost overtaken them and would soon be here. People looked out of their cars to better hear the information. They had little time. It looked like they would have to walk. The man ordered them to leave their cars in an orderly manner and follow the instructions of the military and police. Jang-soo's mother immediately asked him to look after Dabin's sister because they wouldn't be able to find each other if they were separated. The guy was scared, but didn't show it, so that the already frightened little girl wouldn't worry even more. The law enforcement officer continued to repeat that the hero was approaching and they had no time left. But then, out of nowhere, a tank fell on him, turning him into a cake, just a pile of meat, bones and blood. The people listening and looking at him were horrified. He was flattened right before their eyes. They got out of their cars and walked forward, passing the soldier's corpse. This world was going to hell, thanks to the hero's fault. The residents tried to walk as quickly as possible, but did not run so that the energy would last longer. Jang-soo, as his mother asked, led the baby by the hand, but it was too fast for her, and she could not keep up with him. He asked her to hold tight, because if she fell, she would get hurt, and now they didn't need that at all. The children stayed as close to their grandmother and mother as possible, trying to remain calm and not panic. Suddenly, a hero appeared behind the backs of the fleeing people, in his armor and with a huge sword. He looked through his helmet at this panic, and still wanted these people to suffer. On the bridge, behind him, lay numerous corpses, and he stood there and looked at the residents running from below. Did they really still hope to stay alive? The guy thought it was disgusting. This is what despair does to people. Everyone believed that everyone would die, but not him. That was the whole point of these disgusting creatures. Thinking that he would destroy them all, the hero jumped off the bridge, swinging his sword. Dabin in his arms was running a little further among the crowd, in which everyone was thinking only about themselves, like the man who was pushing everyone in his path. Because of this push from this stranger, the little girl could not hold her toy in her hands and dropped it. The bunny fell on the asphalt and bounced off the foot of a man running past at that moment, and rolled under a nearby car. The girl immediately screamed and pulled Jang-soo by the hair to make her brother stop. She pointed her finger at Mr. Bunny, saying that he fell and rolled under the car. He tried to avoid stopping and told her that he would have to leave it, but he could not convince the baby, because it was a gift from her father. The guy looked at his sister sadly, remembering that 6th birthday of hers and how her father gave her a gift. Then Dabin thanked her father and was very happy. It's a pity, but that carefree time cannot be returned. The girl began to cry. The guy asked where her bunny was, while the crowd continued to run forward. She pointed to a car parked in the middle of the road. He was lying underneath it, waiting to be picked up. Jang-soo asked not to let his mother and grandmother out of sight, saying that then they would immediately follow them. Squeezing between the crowd, moving against the flow, he raised questions among people. They did not understand why he was moving in the opposite direction. Having reached that ill-fated car, the guy pressed himself to the ground and saw a toy lying calmly under it. He tried to reach her, but she lay too far away and he wasn't very good at it. Having put in as much effort as possible, he was still able to touch her several times in a hurry, and in the end he was able to grab her. While he was trying to save the bunny, there was no one to save his family. The hero prepared to kill everyone. The guy was glad that he was still able to get his sister Dabin's favorite bunny. A trail of fire from the hero's sword passed through the fleeing people, dividing them in half. Literally, in one blow in a matter of seconds, he destroyed everyone, along with the bridge along which they tried to escape. The guy got out from under the car with a toy in his hands. Sitting on his haunches, he sighed. It wasn't easy. Adjusting his glasses and looking around, he saw a terrible picture. A pile of lifeless bodies. He didn't expect to see this when he got up. He was in complete shock and tried to call Dabin, grandmother or mother. Suddenly he heard some rustling under his foot. Apparently he stepped on something. Looking down, he realized that it was his sister's hand sticking out from under the stone. He began to scream and frantically dig out the place from the stones, in the hope that the girl was still alive. But this was not so. A most terrible view opened before him. Only an arm and a foot remained of her body. Everything else simply turned into a puddle. The guy immediately burst into tears, mourning them. Dabin, she was still so small. This picture made him feel very sick. It was unlikely that anyone could calmly look at his relative in parts, or from the inside. The hero approached the guy from behind, and when he turned around, he looked into his eyes and said that they were beautiful. Jiang-su, in tears, turned around and realized that this was the same hero everyone was talking about. Kim Min noted that his eyes are beautiful because they belong to a man who lost everything. They were like the eyes of a hero, in which there is no place for either hope or dreams. The guy immediately started shouting at Kim Min that he did it, and it was all his fault. The guy took the stick, being in despair. His mind was overshadowed by anger and the desire for revenge. He swung at the hero and, after a short run, jumped on him. God only knows what he was thinking about while performing this action. The hero didn't even move, he just extended his left hand and simply caught him in flight by the neck. Even when he was facing his death, he continued to scream that he would kill him. The hero grinned. He understood that the guy wouldn't succeed, so he asked how Chan would do it. Without waiting for an answer, he plunged his huge sword into the chest, piercing the guy right through. That day, the hero took everything from Jiang-su, apparently, so he will die, unable to do anything. Before his death, he asked for forgiveness from everyone he could not save and for whom he could not avenge. Dabin, mom and dad's grandmother, he took everyone, his whole family and his life. Suddenly the guy heard someone trying to wake up some hero. Some witch stood over him and asked the hero to wake up and come to his senses. When he opened his eyes, she began to scream that thank heavens he had woken up. Jiang-su was lying on some kind of luminous circle with many inscriptions. It looked like a magical seal. So he became someone whom he hated with all his soul. He simply became a hero, like Kim Min once. A year later, after the hero's rampage, the government collapsed, and the guy himself felt relief, causing pain and suffering to people. No one dared to touch Kim Min-soo, and other heroes returned to the world one by one. So South Korea was captured by them. The returning heroes followed Kim Min-soo of their own free will. They divided the country among themselves into return, improvement, blood, transformation, magic, faith, iron hand, sea dragon and golem. As a result, the world was engulfed in chaos. Everything was destroyed. But those who survived after all this remained and became slaves. Even consider Jeju Island, the territory of the hero Golem, where a large stone eye watched over everything. Inside the hangar standing on this territory there lived prisoners, hostages of the situation. One of the girls lay and looked at the ceiling, voicing her thoughts about the desire to die out loud. A friend lying nearby asked her not to say that, otherwise she would suddenly croak, although she would have been happy about it. She didn't want to live in such a world at all, so she believed that this was the best way out. But her friend was not happy about this prospect, because they fled here to stay alive. The first girl couldn't listen to this and simply covered her head with a blanket. Maybe she's right. But how can you call it life? Suddenly the hangar door swung open and a huge stone hand burst into it. There was a speaker built inside it, from which came a voice saying that it was time to work. He politely asked them to hurry up if they did not want to die. He repeated this more than once. The hand counted the hurrying people, after which all the people from several rooms met in the common corridor. They were accompanied by several hands who kept repeating that it was time to work and they needed to hurry up. They lined up like soldiers in front of a crowd of people who were waiting for an announcement. The crowd stood quietly and waited for their, so to speak, ruler, even though it was cold outside. Suddenly his steps were heard. His hands lined up in a kind of ladder to the podium so that he could climb up there. A strong, pumped-up hero, the ruler of Golem, climbed onto his place on his fingers. A handsome guy with red hair and a kind look, with a smile on his face. It was Young Sung-woo. Without removing his smile, he snapped his finger and the sand from the ground began to rise into the air. First, a large amount gathered into a ball, after which it turned into two large columns. A microphone also appeared from one of them so that his subjects could hear everything. He congratulated everyone on the new day, announcing that the women were collecting food and the men were continuing the construction of the sage's tower. He didn't understand when he didn't hear cries of joy, asking why everyone was so sad and insisting that he didn't force them. The girl was quietly indignant that this bastard was mistaken and there were no volunteers here. But he believed that they should be grateful to him. If they got to the lands of blood or faith, they would already be minced meat, although they could easily be turned into lab rats or religious fanatics. He continued to smile, but it turned out that this smile did not bode well, and a kind look was deceptive. He decided that the workers had completely relaxed and put his middle finger to his thumb. The poor people got scared and started running screaming in the opposite direction from the hero, all the hands acting as his soldiers stood in the same position as he showed. After waiting a little, with indifference on his face, he abruptly separated his fingers, as if he had snapped. The stone hands repeated this gesture after him, raising the wind. This was the beginning of their punishment. The crowd continued to run. Some tried to beg for mercy and begged not to do this, but it did not help them. These air currents punched round holes in their chest, which was a fatal injury. While everyone was running away, the girl stood and watched as her friend, spitting blood from her mouth, fell to the ground. She tried to say her friend's name, while bleeding, with tears in her eyes and taking her last breaths. So-min squatted down next to her and, without any emotion, simply closed the dead girl's eyes. And in the morning her friend said that she would crow, but in the end the one who wanted to die turned out to be alive. The Golem hero did the same thing again and ordered everyone to work unless they wanted another thrashing, considering them just stupid cattle. Everyone obediently obeyed. They did not want to die, but there was no other choice. The women collected food, or rather tangerines, on a plantation not far from the hangar. So-min was not herself, but she also continued to collect them, even though it was sad and cold. Suddenly, the grandmother came up to her and poured all her tangerines into the girl's basket. She knew that the girl's name was So-min, and she had a hard time. Her grandmother felt sorry for her. The grandmother thought that she was having a hard time after what she had seen in the morning, and she suggested that she go to the sea to get some air, otherwise she was completely miserable. So-min was worried about her grandmother, how she would cope then, but she had been collecting tangerines all her life, so she could quickly pick new ones. Taking the tangerine, the girl thanked her and got ready to go. Finally her grandmother reminded her about the thing above their heads. She meant a huge eye that periodically changed its viewing angle and watched everyone. The girl calmly walked through the forest, to the sea, to rest a little and think. Always, when her soul was not at peace, she came to the sea. Perhaps that is why she decided to escape to Chingju. At first she simply ate a tangerine and looked at the sea, but in the end she gave vent to her emotions. She began to sob sharply, apologizing to her friend. She wished she had stood in front of her. Tears flowed in streams. After all, she croaked and a person close to her died, but she could not do anything. Suddenly, she saw the silhouette of a man in the forest, among the trees, a few meters away from her. It was a military man. He asked for some food. The man looked very hungry and exhausted. She had an orange peel, candy and half a chocolate bar. Naturally she gave everything to the stranger. After eating a little, he grabbed her hands and began to beg her to bring them some more food. His comrades remained on the ship and he alone went in search of food, even though it was dangerous. The girl was surprised. She knew what the hero could do if he found out everything, but the man was persistent. She asked if they could defeat the ruler if they were not hungry. He promised that they would fight to the last, if his comrades' morale rose, perhaps even returning this island. The girl looked at the eye watching them. If she ran through the forest, she could make it before this thing turned in their direction. She will risk her life to get food, and they will have to defeat the hero at all costs. So-min ran to their plantation and took a basket of tangerines. On the way back she turned to the late Hyun, saying that she really didn't want to die. Simply, she was afraid to live her whole life in oppression, not being able to do anything. This is worse than death. She fled with food for the soldiers and thoughts that she did not want to live such a worthless life. But now So-min will fight. However, when she ran to the place, she was shocked by what she saw. She even dropped the basket. The Golem hero was already waiting for her. He was waiting for the rat that was about to go against her. His subordinate hands clenched the soldiers into a fist, squeezing out their blood like lemon juice. The reprisal did not keep her waiting either. The hand grabbed So-min, but so far not as tightly as the men. She didn't understand how they understood what she was up to if the eye wasn't looking in that direction. The hero was surprised at such stupidity. Is it really true? It looks like there is only one eye here. With one phrase, he cancelled the invisibility mode and hundreds of eyes opened to her gaze, looking in different directions. He asked why she wasn't laughing, it was funny, and he stood there with a satisfied smile on his face. She thought he was a pathetic bastard, but he disagreed, blaming it all on her worthlessness. If something didn't suit her, then she could calmly become a hero and defeat him. For some reason, when the heroes suffered, no one empathized with them, so they saw no point in doing this in relation to other people. The fist squeezed the girl tighter, and she realized that her pathetic attempt was doomed to failure. She asked anyone to come to their aid and overthrow these non-humans. Unexpectedly for everyone, something flew to the ground next to them, throwing off the hero and the hand with the girl. This made him angry and he wondered who this bastard was. So Min realized that he was a hero, but he was not like those cruel ones. There was an awkward silence. The heroes looked into each other's eyes, and his fists continued to hold people. The newly arrived hero asked the one in the jacket to explain what was going on here. She didn't expect the guy to address her, so she was confused, but didn't have time to answer. The Golem hero pointed his finger at him and asked who he was and why he was on his territory. She analyzed the guy who appeared before her and realized that he was not from the gang of the Sword Hero, because the Golem hero was seeing him for the first time. This was her chance, so risking her life, she reported to him that this crazy guy was the henchman of the Sword Hero. He captured Jeju and continues to kill people, and he also killed the soldiers. But she didn't have time to finish. The fist squeezed her tighter. This angered their ruler. He asked if she had done anything wrong, and calmly chat while he was nearby. This is not a meeting of old friends, but this was enough for the new hero, and he wanted to ask only one question. Turning to the Golem hero, he clarified whether this girl was telling the truth, stunning him with her impudence. Without hiding the fact that this was true, he smiled slyly, thinking that nothing would happen to him for this. But the new hero angrily shouted at him to die and attack him with his spear. A dozen hands stood in front of him, blocking the path to the Golem hero. All eyes turned in his direction and turned on the lasers. They were ordered to turn him into a cake and incinerate him. All his creations went on the attack, but the hero was not afraid and went at them point blank. He began to spin the spear above his head, and its sharp blade cut his hands, turning them into pebbles and sand. Having finished with this small army, the guy ran towards the Golem hero, intending to deal with him. The ruler tried to defend himself, and put his hands in front of him, thinking to block the blow. But this did not save him. With one movement of his sharp weapon, the new hero cut off both his hands. He fell to his knees, straight into the water, and screamed in pain, calling his offender a freak. As soon as he took his eyes off his scraps and looked at the guy, he immediately received a boot in the face. The hero stepped on the villain's chest, saying that he was finished, and one would think that it was so. Due to the fact that the Golem hero lost his arms, his stone palms also crumbled, so the girl ended up on the ground. She was shocked by what she saw and did not expect that someone would be able to crush this villain under themselves. After all, just recently, he single-handedly put down an entire naval flotilla, and she continued to watch the development of events. Jiangsu leaned over the hero and asked if the sword hero is the one who wears white armor or not. He was very aggressive from the pain caused to him and did not want to answer the truth, shouting that he did not know. He promised to cut off one part of his body for each, "I don't know," so that it would not be common practice. He pointed the spear at the poor fellow, who was already missing 2 arms and a leg, and asked the question again, to which I received an affirmative answer. Then came the next question about its location. The hero did not want to answer him, simply grinning at him, for which his second leg was cut off. He had already begun to ask for help and salvation, but he did not answer the same question again. Jiangsu will not spare him, because he has abandoned his humanity, but if his question is answered, then it will be possible to die quickly. But by smiling slyly, the Golem hero made it clear to him that he was not talking to him, which might seem strange. It turned out that he was turning to his golems, a good 100 of which suddenly appeared behind the guy's back. For some reason, part of them decided to turn to the girl and attack her, putting her in a stupor. 2 palms took, so to speak, the rest of the guy and raised him high above the sea in order to protect his creator. The hero was bleeding and in severe pain. Tears appeared in his eyes. He remembered how a civilian on her knees begged him to save their world, otherwise the next time the demon would reach his world. She was scared and in tears, asking to help them at least for the sake of saving her world. In gratitude, he only wanted to hear a few words from the family, such as thank you and welcome back. Coming home after saving the world and notifying his father about it, he expected joy and praise from him. Or at least you tried, or something like that. but your expectations didn't match reality. Opening the door, the father shouted at him to get out and that he no longer had a son. In principle, he was not welcome anywhere. Even at the social assistance center they refused him, having said based on the law that they do not provide financial support or provide housing to those over 18. After all, he saved the world and did not understand why he received such injustice and no gratitude in return. Even the employer, who found out that he was underage, simply drove him away, and in Korea the age of majority is 21. And when the guy asked for money for the time he had already worked, the boss promised to call the police, because he himself lied about his age, and then he also asked for something. After everything that had befallen him, he decided that he would not regret if he humiliated this world. And so, cutting back to present time, the world was finally his, and he wasn't ready to die. But while he was remembering all this, the hero managed to defeat all his assistants and save the girl from them. But he didn't have to try, because he didn't have a chance to leave alive. The guy was serious about his death. It is a pity that the hero will not be able to convey this, but he promised that the same fate awaits all conquerors. Unexpectedly, he ordered something to bloom. At first it was not clear what he meant, but then many hands appeared, resembling a peony flower, and in the middle there were eyes. But the new hero was not confused and activated the element of electricity, after which he performed the electric spear technique, called the divine throw. The spear flew straight into the eye, which shot out a red beam like a laser. The spear hit the pupil exactly, breaking the entire so-called flower. Having pierced through the eye, it hit the heart of the Golem hero and left a hole in him. Thus the overlord who destroyed Jeju Island and the UN naval flotilla met his end. Once upon a time, a monument to him was erected in this place for saving that world. Even if it's not much, it's all that the residents could do to thank, at that moment, a real hero. These were the last memories that brought tears to the dying man. They had once prayed for him and wished him happiness. Finally, being without arms and legs, with a huge hole in the torso area, the hero of the Golem died. After his death, all the golems controlling the island turned into ordinary dust. The women picking tangerines at that time did not even suspect what was happening by the sea. For the first time since the rampage of the sword hero, times of peace have arrived on Jeju Island. The girl, returning from the coast, opened the hangar gate and let out the people sitting there. They were happy that they survived it, and were finally safe. People rejoiced, hugged. They no longer believed that this would ever happen, after so many people were killed. The current hero stood quietly and looked at the happy people, thinking about something. He saw a family, mom, dad, eldest son and their little daughter, which made him feel a little sad. He remembered a similar picture where his family was, in the same composition and also with his grandmother. They have someone to reunite with. They are truly lucky, but his family will never come back. Suddenly, he heard a rustling in the bushes behind him. He turned sharply towards this sound. He pointed his spear there, expecting that the enemy was hiding there, but he stopped his tip at the girl's face. She asked why he was hiding in the bushes. Because everyone was wondering who destroyed the hero Golem, she thought that he was coming to them. But he believed that the knowledge that the hero killed his own kind would not give them anything. On the contrary, it would cause even greater horror, and he is not at all interested in calming them down later. Having said this, he turned around and began to leave. And he turned out to be a good-natured person. Otherwise the guy wouldn't even think about their feelings. But it didn't matter to him what she thought. Anyway, they wouldn't meet again. She had only one question: whether this was the only hero he destroyed or whether he would do this to everyone. He wanted to kill everyone who teamed up with the white-armored hero, as he is also called, the sword hero. After all, everything started with him, and because of him, Jiangsu lost his relatives. It was all for the sake of revenge. There could be no other reason. There was nothing else left for him. His family could not be returned. Surprisingly, the girl volunteered to help him. She also wanted to take her revenge, although she did not have heroic powers like this guy. He thought that the girl was out of her mind, but she understood that he believed that she would only get in his way. But he didn't know where each of the heroes was now, but she knew, so she could be useful to him. So Min saw everything with her own eyes when she fled from Seoul to Jeju and knows in which region each of the heroes settled. She even knew some of their abilities, for example, the most important one, the hero of the sword. He was in Seoul, and on the way there he would need to spend the night somewhere and eat something. You need to ask locals, find out how best to get to the right place, or where you can eat and stay overnight. She wanted to take it all upon herself and become his guide, in which case the hero decided to ask something. Why does she need this? Because if she stays here, she will be safe, since the local ruler was already dead. Maybe she could even live a calm and happy life and never meet the heroes again. Although she does not have any special powers, she also lost her family and hated heroes from the bottom of her heart. She would like everything in the world to return to normal, and wanted to contribute to this matter. She has no powers, so she wanted to rely on him and his powers to take revenge. While everyone was enjoying their newfound sense of freedom, the two who had granted it bound themselves to an agreement. If she is not afraid that he might use or abandon her, then she can follow him. In this almost destroyed city, they decided to prepare for the next battles. They came to the hangar. Jiangsu took a brick and began to sharpen his battle spear on it. While he was preparing for the next battles, Somin sat nearby and thoughtfully watched him. She wondered who they would go to first, the strong hero nearby, or to something that was weaker, but which still needed to be reached. The choice was only up to the guy. He was very thirsty for revenge, so the main thing was to kill the one who would be closer, because it was faster. It was in his repertoire. In principle, she expected this, that he would choose this particular option. Then his next opponent will be a sea dragon hero who is quite strong. A terrifying hero of the seas who destroyed the Pacific Fleet. She is strong and her techniques are good. But her pet, this sea dragon, is like a nuclear bomb. Together they killed a huge number of people who fled to Qingju. That day, in front of her eyes, the ship was broken in half. There was her mother, her friend and another guy holding her because she wanted to get there. He asked not to speak as if her sins were some kind of achievement, because their opponent was a murderer. Therefore, she must die, and the rest should not even interest them. The only important thing is that they will need a ship, because they will fight on the water and someone can help with this. The surviving sailors return the ship taken by the hero Golem, and are slowly restoring it. The surviving sailors lined up in front of the guys, led by a captain who was ready to help them for the sake of their fallen comrades. They volunteered to escort them to their destination, giving them their ship in honor of the fallen soldiers. A storm was raging in the coastal waters of the southern sea. The waves rose high and strong, and lightning struck. These were the powers of the dragon hero. She caused storms, tornado whirlpools, around the island of Earth on which the dragon lay. The hero approached the dragon, laid her hand on it, saying that they would never set foot on land again. A man, one of the workers, buried the corpses of his colleagues on the seashore, after which he stuck a shovel into the ground next to the graves and sat down to smoke to rest. While he was resting, the captain of the ship approached from behind and announced that he would be sailing in 2 hours. Turning to the captain, he put out his cigarette and decided to express his opinion on everything that was happening. He doubted that this was the right decision. They didn't know anything for sure. That hero killed the Golem hero. Whether he is on their side or not is unknown, because he turned out to be stronger than that. Will they be able to kill that monster and return to land? Maybe they can do it, but it will be difficult to kill Kim Min-soo. He asked the captain to answer one question about why they would voluntarily return to that hell. The captain answered decisively that the guy had killed the hero Golem, and was going to kill everyone else. Besides, they are not sure of anything else. What he did for them is already enough reason to trust him. 30 soldiers who were like sons to him died, and he was proud of them. If he met them in the next world, he hoped he could tell them something. Even after they left this world, their colleagues still did not give up. Thanks to them, they survived, so they did everything they could to ensure that their death was not in vain. If the hero they are going to help is stronger than Kim Min-soo, then everything is fine. It will be possible to consider that their sacrifice marked the beginning of the liberation of their country. So the captain asked if that was enough reason for the guy to go back to hell. An hour after departure, they were in the area of the Southern Sea. There is no such name on the world map. They called part of the strait that way. The girl decided to clearly show Jiangsu, his future opponent, by drawing him. She wasn't very good at drawing. In general, the sea dragon hero looked the way she depicted him. The guy decided to play a joke and asked if he understood correctly that his opponents would be an earthworm and a stick, a cucumber. She was a little upset, because there was no need to find fault, because she immediately warned that she could not draw. In any case, the main thing is that they work in pairs, harmoniously and together. This is what distinguishes them from the heroes. It turns out she meant that the sea dragon can act on its own. Judging by what she saw, this is not entirely true. The girl always stands on the dragon, and he doesn't even move until she gives him an order, which means Most likely, he has little independence. She believed that in their pairing the hero plays the role of the brain, and the dragon is responsible for brute strength. Jiangsu was also interested in their style of attack. As far as she remembers, while fighting with the soldiers, she saw this happen. The dragon released flames or capsized the ship, while the girl defended herself from attacks aimed at her. This means they had both an attack and a defense, and it must be difficult to deal with them. Just as the girl wanted to say her opinion on this matter, they heard some noise. They turned in his direction. The guy immediately stood in front of the girl, preparing a spear. The soldiers who were also nearby began to scatter to their fighting places. Jiangsu put his hand on one of them, asking him what happened. It turned out that the radar had detected an unidentified object. The captain looked at it and waited for it to continue. The machine gunner counted 300, 400. He was in shock. There were too many unidentified objects. He was scared because a collision would soon occur, for which the guy had prepared and was waiting. The machine gunner also prepared and expected to meet something unknown, although he was scared. They fired many bullets into the water, where there was a cluster of something unidentified. In the end, it turned out that it was fish, a huge accumulation. Perhaps it was the migration season. Some kind of nonsense. Was everyone really so alarmed because of some fish? Which made the hero a little angry. The guy looked further into the water. It couldn't be just this school. He felt that they were getting closer. Their ship was moving straight into a huge hole in the sea. It was the same dragon. The sea dragon hero Shinsuo was standing on the animal. She noticed the guy who killed the Golem hero. The girl ordered him to destroy the entire ship, scaring the crew, but not the hero. The captain commanded the evasion, standing next to the helmsman, who controlled the progress of the ship. Unexpectedly, the hero Jiangsu shouted to drop anchor for them. They looked at the radar again. Realizing that nothing had changed for the better on the radar, they did not understand what it was carrying. The helmsman offered to turn the ship around right away, but the captain refused and decided to follow the guy's order. The captain, following the hero's command, ordered to drop anchor, which they did, not daring to resist him. After the girl told them to all disappear, the dragon began to attack them. Jiangsu immediately used the weapon transformation into the ankle defensive spear. His spear turned into a huge cross glowing with red light with multiple blades. He took hold of it, activating the ankle, thereby creating a shield in front of the bow of the ship. The guy ordered the crew members to keep their heads down if they wanted to live. His shield was able to withstand the dragon's powerful attack. Apparently he had prepared radically. From surprise, shock and slight shaking, the girl sat down on the deck of the ship, simply watching what was happening. The worker who buried the corpses on the coast was outraged, because the hero could not attack because he was protecting them. He asked the captain to give the order to open fire. Surprisingly, he listened. The captain circled the bullhorn so that all crew members were prepared for battle. He ordered to aim at the dragon's head and open fire, which they did without hesitation. Many missiles rushed straight at the dragon, which was attacking the ship at that time. The sea dragon hero took out her staff and began to chant a strange spell. Both the dragon and the crew with the hero Jiangsu were not going to give up and continued to attack each other and defend themselves. The attack was repelled with the help of a shield that the dragon and his hero put up. The captain supported his colleagues. They already knew that such a weapon was nothing against them. Their goal was to distract them from the heroes so that he could deal with them. The main thing is to keep shooting, use all the ammunition, all the firearms that they have. At this time, the guy, with the help of his weapon, tried to resist the powerful blow. Trying to withstand the dragon's attack, the guy realized that the ship's crew was not so useless. After she put up magical protection, the power of the flame began to weaken. If his guess is correct, then they have one reserve of mana between them. If they deplete the dragon, then they will have a chance. After some thought, the guy began to move with his weapon in his hands, continuing to defend himself. He began to move forward. The girl guessed that the guy noticed that the dragon's flame was weakening. As soon as the hero realized this, she began to spin her spear, intending to get rid of the obstacle due to which she had to use a shield. She caught her trident, which glowed with blue rays, and used the Toriadiata technique. The girl summoned a lance trident and launched it towards the ship, breaking one of the missiles in half. When he reached Jiangsu's shield, for some reason the sea dragon hero turned him the other way. The hero did not understand why she turned her weapon right in front of him in the other direction. She began to make some strange movements with 2 fingers, like loops, many times. Apparently, she paved the way for the trident. The first blow fell on the machine gun and its machine gunner, piercing him through the chest. After which, her weapon began to fly, with incredible speed and force, hitting the sides of the ship. Seeing what was happening on the deck, the military doctor immediately ran to the captain, because he must not be hit. But he didn't have time to run, only to shout for the captain to be careful, but he was pierced from behind by a trident. After which, the weapon flew out of the window and headed towards the hero, splashing blood behind it. The girls So-min and one of the crew members saw that their death, so to speak, was moving towards them. The dragon flame was on one side and her trident was on the other side of Young-soo. The girl decided to defeat him with cunning and thought that his end had come. But she failed to kill him. The guy who didn't want to participate in this shielded the nameless hero and took the blow upon himself. He remembered the captain's words that they did not give up, even after the death of their colleagues. Thanks to them, the guys survived, so they did everything to ensure that their death was not in vain. The trident pierced the poor guy right through, leaving him no chance to live, but the main thing is that the hero is alive. The girl was stunned by what happened. She did not see anyone risking their life for the life of the hero. The man grabbed the weapon sticking out of him and tried to push it as deep as possible. He asked the hero to make sure that these sacrifices who died for freedom were not in vain. The hero was also surprised by this act. Looking at the spear sliding down, thanking him for such an act, the guy, without letting go of his spear, grabbed the trident. He activated the freezing element on the enemy's staff. Now he had two weapons. After death, the guy who sacrificed himself ended up with his already dead brothers. With tears in his eyes, he apologized to the guys for being late, but still he did not run away. At this time, the girl recalled the times before this coup. The actions took place in the world of the Sea Dragon Atlas. She was welcomed by the ruler of the time, who was glad that she came to his domain. It seemed that at that moment she reacted more calmly to everything that was happening. So it seemed to the ruler. She must have already heard about what needs to be done to return home. Perhaps she was told about her responsibilities. They told her, but it was all too unusual for her. But gradually everything will fall into place. Today he is here because he has to give her something. She was surprised at first. This trident has a truly ancient history. It was passed down from generation to generation to eventually get to the Sea Dragon hero. She took the trident. It was too heavy. From now on it belonged to her, and the ruler entrusted his life into her hands. He asked if he could rely on her and smiled, knowing the answer before she voiced it. He asked to be allowed to serve her, because now she is a hero of the Sea Dragon, knelt down and kissed her hand. The man promised to protect the girl from everything that would stand in her way to victory. She remembered this because the nameless hero touched her trident. Young-soo got angry and started yelling at him, how dare he touch her trident. The Sea Dragon hero asked the guy to return her weapon back. He replied sarcastically that, of course, he would return it, but by stabbing it right in her head. The guy deactivated his spear and his shield crumbled, at which time he instantly activated the Ice Trident technique, Frost Path. He swung it very hard and threw it towards the Sea Dragon hero. Jang-soo threw it exactly at the fiery flames coming from her pet. The girl was stunned. The dragon's flame froze. She did not yet know what to do next. She simply sat on her pet and put her hands on it. It was better not to attack for now. She ordered the dragon to focus on defense. He first looked carefully at the mistress, after which the dragon began to collect all its energy and strength to create protection. She said something like Giganti Espita 2 Tiada and a huge circle was formed. It was the giant shield of Atlas. It appeared in the form of several layers going towards the trident. It was a 5-layer shield that even the pterodactyl demon could not penetrate. She thought that the guy would not be strong enough to break through it. The shield was a first-class quality. But the trident that Jang-soo launched was launched with such force that it was able to break through the first shield. The shields were broken into pieces one by one. She was in shock and horror. This should not have happened. The trident reached the first shield and remained in it, cracking, but it did not break. The girl exhaled and was glad that he could not break through her defense. After she removed her hand from her face and looked towards the hero, she realized that he had disappeared. It turned out that that technique was not needed to block her attack. It seems that he did this in order to pave the way so that he could run to the girl. He was able to cut the dragon lengthwise using his wits and life lesson technique. He managed to share not only the animal, but also the girl herself, which she did not expect. The last thing she managed to do was touch her dragon and tell him that she loved him, after which both she and her pet assistant fell apart into two parts, falling in opposite directions. Half of her life flashed before her dying eyes, the time when she had just become a hero. She loved her dragon, and he loved her too, because together they defeated the demon. This dragon turns out to be the man who gave her the trident. They were able to avert the evil fate that threatened this world, he said, holding the girl in his arms. He praised her, saying that she had coped with everything, to which she looked in surprise. After which, he kissed her, still holding her tightly in his arms. She even shed tears. But why did she cry on such a joyful day? Still, she understood that the demon was dead, and this meant that they would soon have to part. She was glad that she could return, but now she did not want to live away from this man. He promised to follow her into her world, no matter how strange or impossible it seemed. Having fought back the forces of evil, he has fulfilled his royal duty, so he will follow her as her man. His subordinates did not believe that their majesty was really going to the world of a hero. They said that their worlds were diametrically opposed. The transition could turn into a disaster for him. The hero adapted to their world without any problems, so why couldn't their king? He has already chosen his successor and fulfilled his mission, and would like to spend the rest of his life with her. So, standing at the portal, he put the ring on her finger, and they were very happy. Then their problems began, because the human world turned out to be destructive for the sea dragon. Day by day, more and more often, he spat out his sea dragon parts into the toilet. Maintaining the human form became more and more difficult. The girl asked if he was okay. Knocking on the stall door, she understood that he was not feeling well. But he continued to say that he was fine and they could continue their date. Their happiness developed right before our eyes. One day she came home, took off her shoes, and put her shoes on the shelf. She apologized for being late, but suddenly she saw something she didn't expect. The guy began to turn into a dragon. He had a tail, ears and fins. He bared his teeth and asked not to come closer, for her own good. He was worried about her, but he had trouble controlling himself. She hugged him and said that she had savings and invited him to go to some uninhabited island. Then he won't have to mock himself if there are no people around, and they can build a small house by the sea. They all sat there as well, and she offered to continue living there, just so that he would not say such things again. Then the action took place in the port of Yosu in the southern sea. They covered it with a cape with a hood. The girl reassured the guy, saying that they were almost there. They just had to be patient a little. He was turning into a dragon. He couldn't stand it anymore. And suddenly there was a very bright flash. He turned into a sea dragon right on the ship, thereby breaking it into pieces. After the incident on the ferry in the South Sea, he was shown on the news, calling him a monster. The government mistook them for rebel heroes. They became villains, and a bounty was placed on their heads. He had no choice but to fight off the warships that were trying to catch him. The girl stood on it, sadly looking at the burning ships. For them the guys were just villains. There in another world, he fought to protect her. But now they must switch and do the same for her. Returning to our time, she was already dead, and the guy, dying, also confessed his love to her. Before his death, he hoped that they would at least meet again in the next world. The sword hero sat at the statue of national hero Admiral Yi Sun-sin, one of the landmarks of Seoul. Return hero Lee Sung-jun approached him, looking like he wanted to discuss something. The heroes of the Golem and the Sea Dragon were killed by the newly arrived hero, and he came to report about this. He made it clear that there was hope for humanity. On the walls of the destroyed city there were numerous inscriptions in the style of the apocalypse. This means that the finale of the kingdom of eternal sadness, led by the hero of the sword, may soon come. It's time to do something, because he must fight for his vision of this world. At first he just sat there, doing nothing and not reacting in any way. Then he stood up, which became more like him. The guy still looked with an indifferent gaze. It seemed like the apocalypse was approaching again. A report came to the hall where the spears were kept. The first spear, Burbash, returned, and the fifth, Ankil, disappeared. Apparently, as the witch understood, the hero called him, which can only mean one thing. The revenge that the hero was so eager to achieve seems to have begun. It is necessary to call the blacksmiths. They must try to repair all the spears. The time has come to repay the hero for his services. One of her subordinates, in armor, listened to her, accepted the order and went to carry it out. The new hero was not particularly interested in saving their world, although he devoted himself to training like no other. All the time, from the first day he got there, he was preparing to return to that world. He continued to do this day after day until his strength left him, so he became very strong. When she ran up to Jiangsu and said that she could move on to the next training session, he would hit her on the hand and say that he would decide for himself. Every training session he realized that he was too weak compared to that bastard. he couldn't just chill out here. He believed that Dabin died because he was a weakling and could not save her. He took tasks for granted and completed them without any hesitation or difficulty. In another training session, he killed many orcs, separating their arms and legs. His teammates watched everything happen, but the hero had gone too far and needed to be stopped. He didn't even need the help of the guys. He dealt with everyone himself, cutting them into pieces. After he had killed them all, he came out, apparently barefooted by all these goblins, with a club in his hands. He hit Jiangsu on the back of the head with all his might, and he fell unconscious, rolling down the slope a little. The leader and his subjects looked down at the guy and seemed to laugh at him. When he recovered from such a strong blow and raised his head, he saw that 3 sword heroes were standing in front of him. He thought that he had found it, and anger clouded his mind. He again became ferocious and attacked the creatures, tearing them to pieces. The guys could not understand what was happening to him. The sight was very terrifying, and the guy was very cruel. He inflicted several stab wounds on the leader, wishing him death and shouting that he would finish him off. In the end, he literally cut through a mountain of these goblins and was covered in their blood, as if he had bathed in it. He sometimes had nightmares, for example, his sister asking him for help while lying under a mountain of corpses. Then his mother, with her legs cut off, asking if everything was okay with Dabin, said that she was okay. The main thing is that he takes care of his sister.